Even if an act is deemed criminally legally justified, that doesn't mean it was morally right, and that doesn't mean you're in the clear. The Mantis X firearms training system attaches to any gun with a rail and to your phone via Bluetooth to track barrel movement every shot you take. Use it to help you be the most accurate, fastest shot you possibly can in a defensive encounter. I use it in my training all the time. Hi everyone, this is John with today's active self-protection lesson out of Clearwater, Florida. This video of a man who accosts a woman who is wrongly parked in a handicapped parking spot has just gone absolutely viral. Let's watch and see what happens, then we'll think about some lessons. You can see this guy coming up here and parking, and when he gets out, what you're going to notice is he's frustrated here. He's going to go check the plates because this car is parked in a handicap spot, and he notices that they don't have any handicap decals or anything, and so he's going to start reading this lady who's in there with her 5-year-old son the riot act. And so he is looking around and saying, hey, you're not supposed to park here or whatever. And then now I don't know if she texted her boyfriend who was inside the store or whatever, but he's kind of getting aggressive and yelling. And her boyfriend's going to come out here and see this guy. Now, the news story I have says they didn't exchange any words, just comes up and really hard shoves him twice in the chest there with both hands rather. And then that guy's going to pull a gun, wait 2 seconds and shoot him once in the chest. Now, that's going to drive that guy off and back into the store where our guy on the ground is going to sit there for a minute. And that's pretty much where this one ends. You're going to see the guy who was shot here. His girl's going to get out of the car and go in to try to help him. And our guy on the ground here is going to sit there for a minute and kind of figure out what the heck is going on while she goes in to see if her boyfriend is badly hurt. He is. He's actually not going to make it. This was a fatal shooting. And now our guy is going to get up and start kind of doing some follow-ups. And again, go read all the news stories on this one. The sheriff decided not to charge him. We'll talk about it in a minute. Boy, there is an awful lot to discuss here, and many people that I know are very frustrated about this one. If you appreciate the lessons you get here at Active Self-Protection, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a lesson. Out of this one, friends, we have to talk about de-escalation, escape, and avoidance. We got to talk about getting out of this one before it ever begins so that we don't get here. We also have to talk about the legal standard of use of force and why disparity of force is so important. And then we're going to talk about the different standards in criminal defense as well as civil defense and where this one can still cost this man way more than he wanted to pay. Boys, there's so much to talk about on this one. First and foremost, friends, don't get into fights. This whole thing could have been completely avoided if he had just decided that he did not want to be the police of the handicapped, access. If he had said, now, I don't know, maybe he himself has a disabled sticker, he has a family member who does. I get it that he's frustrated that people abuse that, and I get frustrated at it as well. But when you instigate a conflict, you got to recognize that that conflict can get bigger and can cause these things that can cost you your life. So just because you're carrying a firearm does not give you a right to be a jerk. It does not give you a right to get after people and tell them what they should be doing. It does not deputize you to be the enforcer of any moral codes. Instead, just the opposite. You have to be far kinder. Now notice this guy's body language. He's getting after and kind of like, oh, whatever. Now, again, I want to pay attention. Is he starting to say, you can't do that or whatever? What does he expect her to say? Oh, my bad, sir. I'm so sorry. No, notice his body language here. He's getting aggressive. Look at his head's kind of forward. You see that little bob where he's starting to get a little bit agitated at her, and that's pretty apparent here. Friends, you gotta control yourself as a self-defender. Otherwise, you get yourself into these bad situations, and that's really the thing here. Now, notice, as he's kind of putting his hand up, if I was the guy who, and it's my girlfriend that is sitting in the car, I'm going to see that as somebody who's aggressive. Now, of course, hopefully we're adults and we don't answer a verbal threat with a physical assault. That's exactly what he did here. This is physical assault that happened to him, no question, and that is a battery right there. Now, that's a misdemeanor simple battery, but it's a pretty serious one. He's got about a 20-year age gap, and this is pretty serious stuff. So is this an assault? It absolutely is. Is this a serious thing? Yes, it is. Is this a felony? Well, I don't have any medical information on the guy who did the shooting here, but there has to be some significant disparity of force. Now in Florida, there's a whole bunch of discussion right now about what they call stand your ground hearings. And I gotta be honest with you, stand your ground has nothing to do with this event at any capacity, with this defensive encounter, because he pushed him to the ground. This guy could not have fled. He could not have gone anywhere because he was grounded and the guy was bigger and over the top of him. So any kind of retreating or standing your ground is completely irrelevant. Now there is some other stuff, we'll talk about it in a minute, about immunity from prosecution. But this guy is now on the ground. So look at what happens here. This guy's standing over him and he's starting to draw his firearm. If you kind of watch it again, what you're going to see is that he is just starting at this point to sit up and get his firearm out. Given the fact that he has a younger, bigger, stronger guy over him, could he be in reasonable fear at this moment that the guy could do him grievously bodily harm while he's on the ground, kicking him or punching him or whatever? Yes, I think he possibly could. So drawing the firearm does make some sense here. And if we see it in slow motion, the guy's going to go for his gun, and notice that the perp is backing up as he's doing that. So pointing the gun at him, pointing a firearm is not deadly force. It's force, but it's not deadly force in the eyes of the law. Not, again, if you can take the guy at gunpoint and say, hey man, put your hands up or get away from me or something like that, every bit of totally okay. And listen, sometimes you'll want, as the guy's backing up, to be able to get your firearm out just in case you have to use it. But there's a difference between actually drawing the firearm and using it. And I know in the self-defense world, a lot of people say only draw it if you have to use it. But that's simply bad advice. You gotta know when the time to use it immediately is and when the time not to. Now notice there's about 2 seconds here. And the problem that we're gonna see is between he drew it and pointed it out at the guy, and then he took 2 seconds and the guy was backing away from him, and you could see him quartered away from him when the shot went off. This does not look like an aggressor to me. Now, of course, the sheriff in this county has said, because of the high standard of the immunity hearing of what is commonly called the stand your ground hearing in Florida, which is really an immunity from prosecution hearing, that he said he didn't feel like he could do that. Now, what that requires is what they call clear and compelling evidence, and that what went on here was not justified. If he claimed that what he did was self-defense, then the burden of proof shifts to the state that he did not defend himself. And so what he's going to have to do here is the sheriff has decided that he doesn't have that maybe 70 to 75% confidence that what was done here with the totality of the evidence, which we don't have some of it because we don't know what the guy said, we don't know what his condition is, that it was not justified. Now, I know an awful lot of prosecutors who probably would send that to the grand jury and let them decide, but recognize that district attorneys are political offices and they're looking at their records of victory and those kind of things. And so a lot of times this is politically motivated. Now, if you recognize this as well, I want you to pay attention to this. You might say, aha, you see this guy got away with it. Well, not yet, he hasn't. So again, does this look good to me? I don't think that was necessarily a moral use of self-defense. This one makes me cringe. I think it could go either way given the rest of the totality of the circumstances. This could have been acceptable. It might have been okay because, again, not knowing if this man was badly injured. Now, of course, he was able to get up unaided, so he's not badly injured, and he doesn't look very frail to me. But not knowing all the rest of that stuff, it might, with all those things, have been, in the totality of the evidence, a justifiable act. But it was a preventable, avoidable act. And for the being right about a handicapped parking spot, this man, number one, will deal with the emotional aftermath of taking a human life. Number two, he will deal with the social aspects of being a pariah in his community. Number three, terrible optics for the self-defense community, terrible view for the rest of us in self-defense, because the anti-gun world and anti-self-defense world will look at stuff like this and they will hold all of us to that standard. And so friends, hear me, de-escalate, escape, and evade. Get out of there if at all possible. Don't get into optional gunfights. And instead, if you can take someone with your firearm, take them instead of pulling the trigger. If you can avoid the conflict entirely by keeping your mouth shut and not becoming the moral police, stay away from it. Now, from a civil perspective on the legal side, what is going to happen here? Well, Florida statutes are pretty funky, but what you do see here is that he will have to prove in civil court as well that his actions were justified. Now, because of the way that Florida law is written, I don't know that a whole lot of attorneys are going to actually be willing to file a suit, because if they lose, well, then they lose out on everything and the defendant will recover all their attorney fees and court costs and all that stuff. So it's a very high bar in Florida, and these two statutes from criminal and civil litigation are incredibly unique and very high. But the standard still stands. Everything sets to the same standard, and that is, please hear me, only use your firearm as a tool of last resort to defend your life, because otherwise what's going to happen is what happened with this guy. I am guaranteeing you right now, he is paying an attorney hundreds of dollars an hour to talk to the state attorney, to talk to the press, to be around and in case when he's talking to the police and the investigators, and thousands of dollars that he is paying out right now. in a case that could have easily been avoided. So the biggest lesson to me here is de-escalate, escape, and evade if at all possible. Did this guy cover his asp? Well, friends, I think his asp was not well covered on a number of levels. And I don't want to say that it was a bad shoot because I don't know the totality of the circumstances. But boy, this one gives me great pause. And I think it should give all of us a great pause as we think about our self-defense.